lawyers and they manage it for me.
There are 67 allegations of defamation across 5 publications. Well, workers may soon be able to tell their bosses to stop calling them after hours, with a new bill to be debated in Parliament next week. Joining us now is human resource expert Jonathon Woolfrey. Jonathon, good afternoon to you. Firstly, can you explain how this proposed legislation would impact workplaces and obviously its employees?
Well, we're guessing a lot at the moment, and that's one of the bigger concerns because the details have not been released. It's being held in close guard by the government and only they know. But if we guess and anticipate, they could take an approach which is more principle-based, which gives some general guidance, or they could take a very detailed approach which really prescribes across a range of organisations. So it depends on what approach they take. But at the end of the day, what we're looking at is a unilateral solution across our workforce for the most part that will put the obligation on employers to step up to the plate.
OK, just off the back of that, do you think there are really sort of no guidelines at the moment?
I would say that there's a lot of guidelines at the moment, whether it's from a work health safety perspective, whether it's from an employment contract perspective, or just general protections the Fair Work Act already has. So
okay.
there is a lot out there already. OK,
so if this becomes law, what kind of penalties, and I know we're sort of guessing at the moment, would bosses who break the law face, do you think?
Yeah, they would likely be similar to the penalties bosses face in breaking the Fair Work Act, for example, at the moment. That could normally they try and resolve the issue between the parties without consequences, just to get the parties back on track. But it could escalate from an internal perspective, where a boss could be fired by their manager essentially if they breach the law, or it could be specific commission-imposed penalties on the person, which could be anything from fines or the other actions.
Jonathon, we are obviously living in a very connected world. Have the expectations placed on workers increased in recent years, would you say?
I think the combination of technology advancement and the change in the traditional workplace have definitely increased that tension, that pressure that workers face, and the evidence bears that out.
The right to disconnect has been a workplace right in countries such as France and Germany. Do you think it needs to be included in all workplace enterprise agreements in this country?
Well, from what I've observed in those other countries, it's raised the awareness of the issue, but there's no evidence to say that it's actually solved the problem. It's got employers and employees working closely together, but legislation doesn't have to be the tool to do that. So until there's compelling evidence, I'd suggest we tread carefully and look for alternative solutions if we can. And
one last question before I let you go this afternoon. Obviously, there are times when workplaces do need to reach their staff after they've clocked off, after they've gone home. How do we make sure that they are not penalised in these instances?
Well, that needs to be carefully considered in the way the legislation is drafted. But for the most part, as you've alluded to, there's a diverse range of situations in the workplace where it makes sense for both people. It's not imposing on someone. So the legislation really needs to allow for that, as it currently does.
All right, watch this space. Jonathon Woolfrey, appreciate your time. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Well,